Te hei Māori, ora. Inga mana, inga reo, inga ho, e whā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, katoa. Hello and welcome to today's Spotlight webinar coming to you from the Spark Innovation Studio. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Matt. I am one of the IoT BDMs at Spark and I will be the host for this webinar session. I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping before we get to the presentation, but you're welcome to send in your questions during the webinar. Simply type in your question in the box on the right-hand side and we'll be answering them at the end of the presentation. During this presentation, we'll also be running a poll and we'll ask you to vote on that and we'll give you the results of that during the webinar also. It's now my warm pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Ben Duffus, who's the Innovation Strategic Partnerships Lead at Hawke's Bay District Health Board. Ben has over 20 years working in health and IT, and he has spent the last 10 years of that working at Hawke's Bay District Health Board in project management and improvement roles. Ben currently has the role of Partnerships Lead for the Digital Enablement team, and it's my warm pleasure to welcome you here today, Ben. Good to see you again.
Hi, Matt. Kia ora, everybody. Thanks for inviting me along to this. I noticed how you almost said I worked at Auckland DHB, but I won't hold that against you.
I'm glad. I like coming to your place better.
Yes, right. I am coming to you live from Hawke's Bay. I'm sitting in the Napier House Centre as it is, right opposite a pharmacy, and hopefully they'll keep it down. But I am right in the heart of things here. So yeah, thanks for this opportunity to talk you through kind of what we're doing at Hawke's Bay DHB in partnership with you guys. I think what I'd like to do is just talk you through a few things here, which I think might be of interest. First of all, what I'd like to talk about is me and my role, and how that kind of came to be. A little bit about my kind of history, and also how innovation came to be in Hawke's Bay DHB and how we're working with partnership, etc. So if we can just bring up the slides, there we go.
Thanks,
Thank
Ben.
you.
Maybe do it.
So innovating with IoT and monitoring. So there's a few things we want to talk to you about. First of all, I'll keep this fairly light because I was a little bit nervous about doing this, and everybody said just be yourself, and that was kind of what made me nervous about doing this. Not really a formal kind of guy, so let's just kind of work through this, and you'll kind of get a feeling for what I mean when I say I'm not a formal guy. Anyway, so first of all, a bit about me and cockroaches and why they're kind of one of the same. We'll talk about that. And also the kind of story of healthcare. It's kind of a scary story, but it's got a bit of a happy ending. And innovation in healthcare. And then two kind of case studies I want to talk to you through. One is the real-time medication monitoring that we're doing with Spark, and another one is virtual reality in palliative care, and kind of final thoughts on these things. So it's important that you understand a little bit about me and a bit about healthcare before we go into the case studies, because that really kind of sets the context of kind of what we're doing together here. So just a bit about me. I seem to have, what I've noticed is a bit of a tendency to change jobs at the right before an economic downturn. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's probably not causation, more just kind of correlation. But you can see the little triangles representing times when I changed employment right on the start of an economic downturn in kind of 2005, 2010, 2019. Not sure what that's about, but just something I've kind of noticed. So if you notice me kind of updating my LinkedIn profile, which those of you trying to search me will know it's kind of 6-7 years out of date. But if you see me doing that, you probably know something bad's going to happen in the kind of stock market. So just word to the wise there. So cockroaches, right? So why am I like a cockroach? Cockroaches have an amazing ability to survive, and you would have heard these slightly apocryphal stories about them being alive in Hiroshima after nuclear war, etc. And they can survive for 2 weeks without their head, which is amazing because they can breathe through their body. The only reason they can't survive at all is because they don't have a mouth to eat. But I've had an amazing ability to survive in, I think, quite harsh environments, starting with my kind of foray into the healthcare environment in the hospital, where I came in as a non-clinical person who was there to help nurses, hardworking nurses and doctors at the front line improve things. And the question I always kind of got was, that's great, but we'd rather another nurse or another doctor. What are you going to do? And I was there to sort of help processes and improvement and make things kind of work better and smarter, etc. So I was sort of scuttling around a little bit. And way I managed to survive in that environment was not challenging clinical people as to what was right and what was wrong. I just listened to them and got the kind of guts of what was happening, the high level issues to work with, and really relied on their clinical advice. So that's how I sort of survived as a cockroach in that at that time. Incidentally, funny enough, I didn't show this slide to my daughter, but last night she found a cockroach right before she went to bed, and rather than crushing it, as my partner and I suggested she do, she very gently picked it up, and it crawled all over her hand. Sorry for those of you feeling squeamish, and carried it gently outside. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting that I've sort of made this presentation comparing myself to a cockroach, and my 9-year-old daughter was very gentle as she took it out in Hawke's Bay and released it into the wild. Anyway, there you go. So moving on. So one of the things I had to do in the hospital wards was clean things up, and things were kind of all over the place. No, everybody was too busy to kind of fix things. So we did a lot of what we called 5S work, working to kind of clean up an area and tidy it up so hard-working people could find things and it was easy to find. There's a whole program of work that I worked through initially in the hospital environment. And we came to things like this, and this nursing station was too cramped and too busy to work. And one of the things the nurses challenged me to do was saying we really need to open that wall up, and then we'd have a much better care center. So you can see we were successful at that. The reason I put this up as a story is because I guess I thought initially when I went into health that I wouldn't be there very long. I know I've been there almost 12 years, but I feel like I was only ever going to be there on temporary contracts. So I decided to be as disruptive as I could and break as many rules as I could, because I just thought I was there to help nurses and doctors, and it didn't really matter what the bureaucracy or governance kind of said. So they were saying, you'll never move this wall. And I basically found the budget left over for a little bit of painting, begged some kind of carpenter walking by to knock down the wall. Didn't follow any real process whatsoever, got it approved and done. But then all hell broke loose once they were on site, blasting through this wall with asbestos blowing around the place and people coming up from surgery and infection control people kind of, dragging me by the shirt to explain how this was kind of a bad idea. But I learned a lot from that experience, and actually I came back from work and said, I've just had the greatest day ever. I've just basically smashed a wall and broken all rules, and it was so much fun. So I kind of had an early reputation of kind of not following rules, and I used that as a bit of a crutch for allowing me to do things, saying I don't really understand how these things should work, so I don't know the rules. And obviously that went a little bit tired when it got to 10 years, and I was still saying I didn't really understand the rules. But that's how things kind of worked for me initially. And then, so then I went into more of an IT environment, and I kind of applied that same sort of methodology we talked about with the cockroach, where I felt like, wow, these are some really clever technical people with an amazing amount of skills, and I've got to work with them and manage them in some cases and hear from them about what needs to happen. So again, I went back to my cockroach mentality, and I really tried to survive by not challenging them too much on what was technically possible, but just really trying to understand the nuances of what was happening and working together to kind of, rather than trying to train myself as a developer over 6 years, just realizing I couldn't do that and trying to understand the gist of it. So my new role is kind of broken down into 3 key areas, which is improvement functions, which are kind of similar to the stuff I've already described to you, is like working with the hospital staff and trying to make improvements. It could be process related stuff. It's mostly process related stuff. It's facilities builds, it's staff hiring. They might call me in to say, we've got an issue, this process doesn't work, there's not enough space, there's not enough people, and can you help us with it? So it's that kind of stuff. And then the innovation stuff is kind of a new thing where I'm really picking up, and that's got more of a technical flavor to it. So that's some areas that we want to work on within the digital enablement environment. They're really going to help us take a leap forward. And the partnership bucket is really enables both those things. And sometimes it cuts across improvement and innovation, but mostly it's sitting in the innovation space. And these are some of the things I want to talk to you about today, is how we really rely on our partners to make these things happen. And we really just have no ability to kind of pivot and move on some of these opportunities without great partnership support. So just again, so that's kind of me and where I am. And then this is kind of the healthcare section of the presentation. We'll talk about the healthcare thing. Now, in the COVID environment, we've all been asked to make, this is a worldwide thing, of course, make sacrifices in order to kind of stem the flow of COVID cases, and most of the reasons we've given for that is kind of healthcare system capacity. And if we don't put protective measures in place, the healthcare system will be overwhelmed and reach a capacity, critical capacity, and we'll be not denying people care. Now, there's a little secret I'm going to let you in on, and this is just this is a view. It doesn't necessarily represent Spark or Hawke's Bay DHB, but a little secret for you. The healthcare system is already well beyond its capacity and has been for some time. So we routinely deny people care on the basis that we do not have enough capacity to deal to it. Now, I don't mean that in an alarmist way. If you were to turn up to ED, you'll get wonderful care and you will get to you. Acute surgery will be done, cancer treatment will be done, but there's a whole lot of healthcare that isn't delivered on the basis that we do not have enough resources to provide it to everyone. And that is just a fact of how we operate. And that's an important context to understand as we move through and we talk about innovation, etc. So here's some of the reasons why. So the average 85-year-old uses 16 times more health than the average 40-year-old. And obviously anyone knows that we have an aging population, and that is just something that's completely unsustainable with the method of the way we're delivering care. On top of that, you've got rising technology, so sort of more things that you can do to people. So there's a whole lot more stuff out there, which is wonderful. There's all sorts of new treatments and stuff we can do. And on that, you've got rising consumer expectations, which are kind of tied to that technology, right? So you've got people who want these things and have an expectation that they're going to get more out of their health. And of course, one of the most insidious or difficult ones is the chronic disease, or the diabetes in particular, or heart failure, or COPD. The rise in that has created a kind of a perfect storm for the healthcare system to work on. Now, those of you who kind of maybe know a little bit about health, and particularly in the COVID thing, will be going, why on earth did we wait till the system was at 95% capacity and we all have to make these measures? Why don't we just invest in health and make it work correctly so we weren't in this place? And the issue really is, you can throw money at it and improve a lot of things, but fundamentally there are a lot of things that need to be sorted with healthcare, with regards to processes, etc. I'll just give you some examples. So this is just, I mean, I think Google's a great kind of democratic indicator, not of what's truthful, but what people think is truthful. So if you just typed in wasteful and then space and an H, this is kind of what you get. I did this yesterday just to see what came up. And you got wasteful healthcare spending, wasteful healthcare spending examples, and wasteful healthcare practices. And there's quite a lot of kind of healthcare related stuff under the term wasteful. That doesn't mean it's true. It just means that people think it's true. But also interesting, wasteful hobbies and wasteful habits, I thought was kind of a little bit mean. That's a typical internet thing. Let's kind of berate people because I don't really like what they do in their spare time. But anyway, sidetracked. Back to the wasteful healthcare spending stuff. So it has a reputation in some sense of not being wise with its spending. And there's some truth to that, in the sense that it's a complicated thing. I hate to just say it's complicated, but it is. I've been in it for 10, 11 years. If you're trying to fix one process, the way it relates to so many other different things, it's so many different dependencies, it's really hard to improve these things. But it's absolutely clear that things could be better, and it's not just a case of more resources. So for example, if you arrive in our ED department and get admitted to the ward, it's a distance of about 300 meters. It might take you about 5 hours to get processed through that point to get up to the ward. So it's kind of like a snail's pace. In fact, it's slower than a snail's pace, because a snail could probably do it in about 4 hours using the average snail speed. Again, thank you, Google. This isn't about the hardworking people at the front line, which are under immense pressure. It's about system capacity, and it's about processes. So, for example, if you come into the ward, or come into ED, you can have an ambulance report, an ED-RN assessment, an ED doctor assessment, a surgical registrar, a medical registrar. You might be working out who's doing what and what specialty you belong in. And then when you get to the ward, you have an RN, occupational therapist, a physio, a social worker, a rehab, depending on where you're going. And these are all delivered through a mixture of paper, desktop, phones, phone calls, etc., all sorts of muddly mess. And I'd love it if they were all related, and it was like a kind of like started with a dot, and then we drew a circle around it and drew another circle around it, and the picture of the patient became clear as they went through the journey, and everybody built this amazing picture on a patient. At the end, we made a diagnosis. But But in the end, it's more like it's a Venn diagram of overlapping assessments, some of which are duplication and other which are new ones. But it's sort of a it's a bit of a complicated process as we go through. And this is not a reflection on the clinical and operational people. This is a reflection on, if anything, people like me who are tasked with kind of improving these things and making them work better. There's system failures in how we operate. So, and in the context of that, when we talk about innovation and technology, so I'm coming to you from Napier at the moment, and those of you who might know the sordid history of the Napier Hospital. There was two hospitals here. There was one in Napier and there wasn't one in Hastings, and they decided to shut the Napier one down and just make one big one in Hastings. And obviously people still talk about that many years after it happened in 1998. But that image on the left, this isn't an actual image from Napier Hospital, but I'm assured it looks something like this. They actually, when they left Napier Hospital in 1998, they had before they left, they had a phone switchboard where the operator actually plugged in things to patch calls through. So when they shut down the hospital, that technology wasn't taken to Hastings, but it was taken straight down to the museum at the bottom of the hill where it still sits. So we're kind of a little bit behind on technology here in New Zealand within health. We still use pagers quite across a lot of hospitals and DHBs, and we have a well-documented reliance on kind of fax machines. So these are the sort of technology that we're grappling with. So when we talk about innovation in here, we're talking, well, a difficult healthcare system with complicated processes, and we're also talking about a reliance on outdated kind of technology. So, and another thing to think about is the kind of patient experience here. So there's 4,688 squares on this page, each representing a week of someone's life if they live to 90. And there's two squares down the bottom are kind of like an imagined 2-week stay in hospital at the end of life. And the judgments we place on that person at the end to work out who they are, ignoring the kind of all the squares before that made that person. And thinking about the healthcare too, the person who's lived for those 4,688 weeks has looked after their health for 4,680 weeks. And at the end, we've kind of gone through and looked after the health in a hospital setting for 2 of those. So this speaks to the patient voice that needs to kind of come into healthcare, and also speaks to the kind of hospital-centric model of thinking about healthcare as something that's delivered in the hospital. In fact, there's a lot more going in, which is self-management and community-based. So another point, final point I'd like to make here on the healthcare system is around kind of risk versus innovation. If there's a kind of a spectrum, which is risk on one end and innovation on the other, you can kind of imagine where I might sit. And it's just, this is something I've been kind of interested in when we talk about earthquake proofing our government buildings and the 20 billion we've put against it. I just Googled this because I was kind of interested to know how many people have died on the roads in New Zealand versus how many people have died from earthquakes in New Zealand. You can see there's quite a bit more on roads versus earthquakes. Now, this isn't about a debate about road safety and speed limits, etc. I don't want to talk about that. It's more about the big risks kind of really frightening us versus the kind of small risks that kind of creep up. And also what I find in a healthcare environment, because it is risk adverse in the sense that it's all about saving lives, so it's very difficult to convince people that they should kind of, be a little bit riskier with some of that behavior. But what I find is we have systems or processes that might be, I don't know, 80% safe or 80% good, if there is such a measure, and we kind of want to improve it, and I'll find something that maybe is 90% safe, but people won't want to move, and all they'll talk about is the 10% that we haven't achieved. And we get into this position where we'd rather not move or do anything, even though there's an ability to improve on things, because we're still not making it 100%. And I think partly that's down to the inadequacies of funding, where a particular area might have not received funding or etc. for quite a long time, and by the time you get around to them, they want to hold out for the best kind of funding they can have. So that's might be might be the reason why. But anyway, that's the context of what I think is happening. And interestingly, there's I didn't quite Google this, but I did look on our internet. I typed in risk in job descriptions in our Hawke's Bay DHB, and I I found that there was 14 people with risk in their job title. Then I typed in innovation to see how many people had that in their job title. And as it happens, it's only me. So there's 14 people, I guess, maybe concerned about risk and one concerned about innovation. Now that I don't want to create a pitch battle between risk people and innovation people, but I think that does sort of paint the picture of what's kind of happening with health, within health, and with a lot of these systems. As our greatest fear is something going wrong, rather than the motivation of really trying something new and different. So that's the kind of environment we're in. So I think that's kind of where we are, and I think I'm very fortunate that within our digital enablement department we've invested in a kind of innovation strategy. We really want to work forward to see where this can go. So I guess I think I liken it to like an investment in kind of a diversify your assets kind of investment. Like there might be a certain amount of our work that is geared towards keeping the lights on, or BAU type of work, and some of it might be how to improve things, and then a smaller slice might be how to innovate and experiment. And that might be stuff that's your riskiest kind of stock market type investment, where it's high return, high risk. But I think it's essential, given all the stuff I talked about with what's going on in health, that we have some of our thinking towards innovating and moving together on some of these things. Was there anything, I'm just kind of moving through, does anyone have any other questions, Matt, or is there anything else that I need to answer as I go? I'm kind of whistling along here.
I'll bring questions through a bit later on for you, Ben, but
Okay.
yeah, great presentation so far. Thanks.
Okay, keep going. So that's my kind of view on where things sits, and I'd love it if we had a little bit more kind of innovation going through on that part of it, not just because I'm tasked with it. I just believe that's kind of the way forward. I don't believe we can solve things with a kind of status quo. So this is a cartoon I've made. I've stolen the image of the man drowning, but I've made the text for you. So this is Ben Duffus's comic strip of innovation and improvement in healthcare. So I think the status quo, I don't know what that is. That's the doctor, that's the healthcare person, sort of drowning on, and as I said, it's about a kind of capacity issue type of thing here. They can't cope with what's going on. They can't cope with the demand. The processes aren't there. The facilities not there. The people aren't there. And I guess the BAU approach is kind of like, hey man, that's that really sucks. But keep going. You're doing well. Keep treading water. Off you go. I wish I could help, but like keep it up, man. Like you're doing great. And then maybe improvement might be, hey, well, why don't you try something different? Why don't you try a different stroke? You should, maybe something different here. There's a different process. See if you could, maybe you'll kind of get out of that situation. And then I think of kind of innovation version 1 as, hey, try this new technology. How about I actually do something for you, fire you kind of a life raft, and it might kind of improve things for you. And then finally, I was kind of slightly cheekily thinking, son of innovation isn't just about technology and, hey, this got an idea, you can actually just stand up and walk out of there. That's not to say that the problems weren't there, but sometimes the solutions aren't what you think they're going to be. And there might be something simple that doesn't involve the latest and greatest technology to kind of achieve. So in Hawke's Bay DHB, I feel like we're in this kind of Goldilocks zone, as per that bowl of porridge. I think we're in that perfect size DHB where we're not too big and we're not too small. So we can we've got all the services you'd imagine from a big DHB, but small enough that we don't have huge layers of people to work through to pivot on new ideas and stuff. And also I like to think in Hawke's Bay, we're kind of at crossroads of technology, health, and innovation. There's a lot of kind of tech startups happening here in the Bay. And we've obviously got we're a large employer here. The largest employer in Hawke's Bay is the DHB. So health is a big presence. And also there's a bit of an innovation thing going on in the Bay as well. So I really want to we want to position us as being in that place and part of that conversation where health and technology come together within Hawke's Bay. And also just think staff need to see things get better. They need to see little pockets of innovation or improvement sprouting up. And we need to foster a culture of experimentation where steps forward are rewarded and failure is not feared. And it's sort of this virtuous cycle where ideas that are implemented generate more ideas, and there's the staff ownership of issues and their resolution. And I feel like sometimes I go around and light fires with people, and I come around and we talk about improving something, and they're all motivated, and we light the fire together, and they come around and the fire's out. And other times they come around and it's roaring. And I think it's just finding those opportunities where they kind of self-manage. You plant the seed, they own it, they go. And as a one-man innovation person, you kind of need that. You need people to kind of own those things and go through. So I just want to give you some examples of that approach. So this is an example of a partnership we had between ourselves and Digital Enablement, the pharmacy team in Hawke's Bay DHB, and Spark around real-time monitoring of critical medications. So noting that medications require robust temperature monitoring, irreversible damage if it can happen if they're incorrectly stored. There's also a significant expense associated with the loss. And if you think about it, some of these, quite a number of our medications are actually made abroad. And if you think about the supply chain involved in getting a medication to Hawke's Bay DHB pharmacy, all the people involved from the manufacturer, the distribution, the supply, the storage, and it gets in front of us, we store it for a bit, and then there's a failure and it doesn't hit that correct temperature, we actually bin that thing. I mean, just reflect on the effort involved in getting it there, and then we just kind of throw it out. It feels inherently kind of wrong and a failure on our part to manage it. So we have robust fridges, etc., in place, and we have an existing system, but it relies on kind of manual recording. So we go around and we pull the data for the previous month to see if it was in range or not within range. So if we find that it wasn't within range, we have to work out then what medication it was. Could it withstand being out of range for X amount of time? Yes, no. Should we bin it? Yes, no. So it's kind of a lot of work there, and it's very obviously reactive. So it's kind of after the fact. So the horse is well and truly bolted by then. We've assumed, we've dealt with it, but we've missed the opportunity of kind of minimizing that impact. So we came up with this collaborative partnership between us, Pharmacy Digital Enablement, and Spark. So it's a real-time management system where you can see on the left on the picture is the sensor that sits in the fridge, and it connects to the coverage in a box unit there, which is a LoRaWAN connection, and then it goes over cellular and it's into the cloud, so we can sort of see what's happening. So that sensor, what that does is it alerts as soon as it's out of range. So as soon as it's less than whatever temperature we set, normally 2 degrees, and higher than 8 degrees, it sets off an alert, and that alert can be configured to go to anyone's cell phone or anyone's email address. So what we've set it up to do is go to the cell phones of the people in the ward. So rather than the fridge kind of beeping at them silently because they left the door open, or someone working out that has been out of range over the previous month, it goes off right away, so someone can go and assess that fault and fix it. And we also have the ability to look at the data over time easily to work out if any of those times it was out of range where that was kind of an issue. So that partnership approach, that one team partnership approach, I think it's really a good innovation story, because I think the easiest thing for us to do would have just been go to the existing supplier, work out, upgrade on their system, not do anything too new and impressive here. But I think we really push the boundaries here and to try to work on something together. So what we've done here is created something that's a little bit bold, and it's been a difficult journey at times, but what we've got is something that's kind of really cutting edge, and we're really excited about it. And often you have to do that, obviously, with innovation and stuff. So it removes that manual and daily and monthly checks. It's real-time notifications, allows us to have that safe storage policy and procedure so we know we have the right end-of-life products, and reduces the expenses of losing critical medication. And we can use this solution to leverage off other opportunities that we want to get going, and I'll talk to you about it in a minute. We've also used it proactively with our COVID vaccination sites as well, so we can see what's happening with those critical medications or vaccinations. So here's an example of a COVID vaccination fridge. So you can see this is it recording what the temperature is every 15 minutes over time, and you can see it kind of moves around a little bit between 4 and 5 degrees, and then you can see it shot up at one point over to 8 degrees and went down. So when it shoots up at that point, it fires off a text message. And we had it as a trial earlier on last year to see how it was going during the COVID vaccinations in Taradale here in Napier. and we had a whole bunch of us on that, and everybody picked up the phone and phoned around to find out what was going on. And it turned out it was, someone had taken the thing out of the vaccinations themselves were fine, but someone had taken that sensor out of the fridge because they thought, what is this? But the point is how reactive we were able to be instantly about what happened there, and critical vaccinations, etc., as part of our healthcare response to COVID is well documented. So being able to kind of move quite quickly on it has been really amazing. I'll give you another example. I quite like this. This is kind of an unfortunate one because we had this in place early on. This is a trial, and we weren't really monitoring it properly. But what we did do is retrospectively look at what the data did during a fridge failure. So this is our main pharmacy fridge, which holds a huge amount. So walk-in fridge holds a huge amount of stock, and it actually failed. One of the compressors failed, and it was a horrible thing for our hospital pharmacy team to have to deal with and urgently move stuff out and deal to it, etc., and then get the compressor fixed, and it went back online. Now, what I find interesting about this is you can see what it looks like after it breached is a nice stable kind of up and down as the compressors kick on and off over time. You can see that nice tidy line to the right of it, and you can see the failure happening. What's amazing to me, and this is where would be really cool, would be, can you kind of predict a failure before failure? So I sort of think, well, that's on this sort of section it's not nice and uniform. It's almost like you're watching a robot die here. It's sort of like there's a sort of before the death, you can see it's kind of getting a little bit sick and things aren't responding correctly, and then finally it's dying and it's climbed up and it's hitting that point. So I think it'll be getting this kind of data is really exciting because we can start being a lot more predictive with it, and really, so if we can, rather than kind of responding to an event, we could kind of also maybe predict that event and get there, catch it before it happens. So this leads on to the kind of asset tracking discussion. So I mentioned my time kind of in the hospital at the start of my healthcare journey, and this is an asset tracking system that I'd developed. It's pretty high tech. Developed this in 2011. So there was a whole lot of commode chairs around the ward. They're all going missing and nobody could find them. The nurses were wasting time finding them. So I was like, well, let's create a centralized commode store. And then I laminated this bit of paper, took photos of all the commodes, put Velcro on that laminate. And the idea is that someone would, if they were to take a commode from home base, they would indicate, they move that little thing on the Velcro in the picture to indicate where they were taking it to. When they brought it back, they would put it back to home base. And so that was my really sophisticated asset tracking system in 2011 that I devised all by myself. I know it's very impressive. I'm sure you're very impressed by that. So fast forward to kind of like 2022. This is a map of our campus, and we've got over 3,000 critical assets that we want to know kind of where everything is. That includes complicated kind of clinical equipment, as well as wheelchairs, beds, etc. So where is anything, and how much time are clinical staff spending looking for things? As part of any day, quite a few minutes are wasted looking for these devices, and being able to put your hands on it quickly is critical in a situation, not just because there's risk created, but it's just a waste of everybody's time. And the most expensive, healthcare is very expensive to deliver. So the worst is having whole people sitting around waiting for someone to find a piece of equipment. But also, we don't really know how often anything is really used. We don't have an idea of how often something is used in clinical time versus just in storage. There's no way of seeing that. We don't even know if it's left the campus. We routinely find wheelchairs and beds and stuff are stolen and taken out different places. We wouldn't know. And should have left the campus. Some can go, some can't. We don't know which devices should or shouldn't. How many of things do we actually have? The spreadsheet might indicate we have so many, but do we? How many have lost? How many have gone? Should we buy more of things? This is a difficult decision. The kind of capital budget is a really hotly contested fund every year in our DHB, where everybody puts in their story of why we need a particular piece of equipment and why that's the most important thing for them. And they might have to go through that committee years and years and years and years before they finally get their hands on a bit of equipment that they want. But we don't really know if it's a bladder scanner and a particular ward wants it, and there's another one across there, we don't know how many of these things we have and where they are and how often they get used. So we need to make better decisions about where all these things are. And the whole asset tracking thing has moved on quite a bit from my laminated template, but also even at 2011, there was obviously technology around with gateways and RFIDs and things like that, and you're going to have to install these gateways in every location to put it in. And thankfully, we didn't move on that. Although, typically in healthcare, we said, "Oh, we're going to do that next year," or in the next 3 years, we'll have that done. And we've gone through, 4 cycles of 3 years since then and done nothing. But looking back on it, that was probably the right thing, because now we're at a point where we can actually plug and play some of this technology, and Spark have given us some of these to kind of play with. And man, it's made such a difference. Even just say an ICU who are really crammed in, have no clinical storage. We've encouraged them to store some of their clinical devices out of the ICU, not too far, but on the basis that they can track them and put their hands on them quickly by looking through our asset management system. So we are really excited about what we can do this year with asset management.
Ben, we might take that opportunity just here just to put the poll up. So, the poll question that we were posing to our audience today is, are you looking to implement any monitoring solutions? And there's a number of options there with regards to responses. But we'll let that run for obviously the next few slides, and then we'll move into some of the really good questions that have been asked as well.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Yep, I can see that. Do you want me to answer that poll? I'll do it. Yes, we are. There we go. Submit vote. Okay. So, right, moving on. So that's kind of the situation. Look, I really am excited about what we can do with asset tracking, and it doesn't have to be a massive project. It can actually, we can plug and play some of these devices, explain to people how to go with it. It's just going to be one of those things that's really going to grow this year. I really think this is the year to do it. Although I have said that for 11 years in a row, but this is the year, trust me. So here's another example of a cool kind of thing we're doing in partnership with Spark. This is about Raranga Tatira, our partnership. It's one of our another example of what we're doing together. This is about using virtual reality in a palliative care setting. So virtual reality and healthcare, have been fascinated by those links for a while and seeing what we can do here in Hawke's Bay DHB. A lot of other places have played around with it as well, but through kind of begging and asking nicely with Spark, they managed to give us a virtual reality headset, which I've then gone around to lots of different areas and said, do you think this could work or not work? How do you think this could be applied to a healthcare setting? So we've got a few kind of seeds going there, little seedlings growing. And one of them is in palliative care here. We have a hospice called Cranford Hospice. And we really wanted to think about, could we introduce a virtual world to palliative patients who can no longer experience it directly? So could we bring, experiences to them that would be relevant and important? This came to some of the trials where I was going around and I talked to different people. I was talking to someone in ICU, and there was an ICU consultant who also was a palliative care physician as well. And she said she'd just come from talking to one of her patients whose dying wish was to see her garden one more time. And she said, sadly, she wouldn't be able to. And that got us kind of thinking as a project team, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring the garden to the patient? So what if we had people filming the garden or the beach or the thing that was important to this person and bringing it to them in a palliative care setting so they could experience it virtually one more time? And Cranford Hospice has a history of being really innovative in this approach. They'll do anything for their patients, for their dying wishes, etc. They had a horse jockey who was staying there, and they actually brought a horse onto the grounds for him to be near a horse. And it was kind of a bit of a disaster in terms of trampling all the flower beds. But anyway, they have a history of doing that type of thing. So they're really good partners with this type of approach. So again, we pulled in Spark. It's us, it's Cranford. We've also got a partnership with EIT, the local polytech here, to see if we can find people who might be able to kind of partner with us on this. And we have found a master's of computing student who wants to kind of help us get this embedded. So it's really working with that strategic partnership to supply the equipment and being agile and modern, focused on rapid delivery and ongoing iterative improvements. So rather than going, we're going to film someone's garden and plonk the thing on their head, we're like, well, do people even like this? If you're feeling really sick and you're in a palliative situation, you're dying, do you really want this hot headset on? Is it useful? Is it good? Is it not good? So we needed to kind of walk before we could run with this thing. So that's kind of what we've done. So, and again, look, it's an opportunity for innovation within our healthcare system. I've said earlier about how important that is. It's also supporting research in an emerging field. We as I said in Hawke's Bay, we want to be part of how this new technology comes about. We want to be part of that discovery process. We don't want to be passive receivers of this in 5 years when I have no doubt it'll be commonplace. We want to be the ones who kind of form that journey as it goes. So we did trial it on a patient in Brittany House, and that was quite a difficult but difficult experience for me and my colleague who were there on what was that actually a teenager in a palliative care setting, who was lovely to have actually gifted us her time to help us with this. And it was it was quite an impactful experience, and it was difficult, but we were so grateful for her to give her time to us to help us understand how this could work. And we learned quite a lot from even just putting it on there in the bed, seeing how unwell some of these people are, and learning how we couldn't modify it and make it work for them in that environment, and understanding what was right and what wasn't. So this is an emerging kind of thing. We're going with it. We're hoping to get to that point. We've started to collaborate with a local digital agency who are really excited about this idea and want to help us with some of the filming ideas if we can get to that point where we film gardens for people. So they really want to help us, which is really good. People really leapt on this idea and really keen to support. So it's really phono and patient-centered type of thing. It's a purposeful, multi-layered partnership approach. There's other opportunities here. We're looking at endoscopy emergency department. We've got some discussions going about phantom limb pain. We've talked to different academics who are physio academics as well as computer academics up and down the country. We're forming a little group going, looking at what would happen if, for phantom limb pain, and those of you must kind of have heard a little bit about this, for those amputees who still experience pain in a limb that's no longer there, what could we do to kind of project a limb in that place so they could alleviate some of the symptoms? This is again an emerging field, but we've connected to some big players in this in Europe, so we're really excited about where we might be able to go with this. But we're also kind of linking in with just getting going with it. And I was here just 2 weeks ago talking to the physio, and she has someone who's just lives around the corner in social housing, who's a recent amputee and is struggling with adjusting. And we just thought, can we just bring in a virtual reality experience, not so much directly with the phantom limb pain, but just to kind of help him kind of maybe even just doing the exercises in an environment that's more conducive to it, rather than sitting in his cramped kind of apartment. Could we put this on? Will that help him do things? So we just want to kind of move and use an agile approach and plonk it on someone and go and learn. There's no point in this taking 2 years to develop something for phantom limb pain and then finding people hate having the thing on their head. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. It really kind of supports that innovation and speed to delivery with this approach. So I'm going to end with this slide that everybody always puts up when they talk about innovation. So this is the go-to slide for anyone saying about innovation. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, Henry Ford. So obviously this is the typical innovation slide everybody puts up. I just want to put a slightly different slant on it because I've always despised this slide, not just because Henry Ford was a kind of raving racist misogynist even for his time, but actually I kind of hate this because it's kind of patronizing in the extreme, because you're not even asking people, you don't even care what people want, you just have an idea of what you think is better, so you're going to deliver it. And the car speed in central London at the moment is about 8.1 miles per hour, and a horse-drawn carriage can go about 12 miles per hour. Plus, a car kind of increases pollution and increase in fatal accidents. So I like kind of spinning that one on the head because I've always hated that quote. And actually, innovating isn't about Elon Musk telling what we should be doing. It's really about listening to what the opportunities are, and sometimes looking for those kind of ideas that are simple to do, and really being clear about what patients want and what staff want, rather than kind of us dictating what we think is best. So that's it. I'll leave it to hand over to Matt for questions, etc.
Oh, look, Ben, like it's been fantastic hearing your passion and just your thoughts with regards to your role within health, and the point that you made around 14 people with the risk in their title, and then one innovation lead being yourself. Obviously, we had a poll posed in regards to are you implementing any monitoring solutions? So the results for that we've got up there at the moment is 47% said yes we are, and 40% said we're exploring options. I just wonder what your thoughts are there, Ben. To your point earlier around the technology is getting easier. Do you think that's got some influence there?
I'd say so. It's also hard to know. It's one of those things where everybody wants to do it, and so they'd be crazy to say no, we're not. Like, I guess if you'd asked this poll of our DHB in 2011, we would have said, we're exploring options, but we've been exploring options for 11 years. So I guess to me, there's a couple things. One, it's just way easier now, way easier than it ever has been, and you'd be daft not to do it now. There is a question to understand about, if you put asset tracking in, you're going to get a whole lot of information that you didn't have before. That is, I guess, a good thing, but not necessarily, because you've given yourself a whole lot of work. So you have to be prepared to do something with the data. There's no use tracking. You can track a whole lot of stuff and find out where it is. That's awesome. But if you're going to then make decisions about where things are, how well they're used, what you should do, you got to be prepared to invest in the analysis as well. So that might be something, rather than doing a box ticking exercise and feeling good that you're doing asset tracking, you got to kind of be able to do the mahi on the other side of it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we have got some really good audience questions. We've got a question from Ben, and it comes through. It says, starts off with, it appears to me the biggest barrier to innovation and the resultant focus on BAU, broadly speaking, is a legacy of underinvestment and focus on risk avoidance. How do we start to turn this around? Is it a matter of innovating and making a jump, or is it more a gradual approach?
Is that question about technology within health, or do you think it's just a general question about healthcare delivery?
Suggests it's probably around that technology and innovation within health.
Yeah. So we definitely have, within technology itself, we have a huge underinvestment in our infrastructure that needs to be sorted, and I'd be wrong of me to say we should ignore that and just push on with innovation and forget about the kind of routers, etc., that are aging and kind of propping up our infrastructure. There is huge amounts of work to do to sort that kind of infrastructure. The question of, again, I think it goes back to that kind of slide where I showed the kind of investment side of things. I really think you need to be forward thinking with some of these things and thinking about what the next steps might look like. And there are always those little opportunities around, do we prop up this kind of existing system and try and improve it? Or do we actually kind of go, let's think completely out of the box here and think what else we might be able to do? And I think, cellular has a huge role to play. Mobile technology has a huge role to play there that I think is not really fully explored. And moving from a call center system with the call center operating, plugging something in, to pages to faxes, you don't want to be moving to the desktop or even the laptop. You want to be going straight to mobile with some of these things. And that's kind of some of the work we're doing with task management and emergency paging. I think so. Maybe it's about not ignoring the fact that there's huge underinvestment and things that need to be sorted, but looking out for those opportunities of leapfrogging some of this stuff and moving kind of forward. I think it's really around mobile technology there, in my view.
That probably flows on to our next question from Zane. He's asked the question, how has your team managed to get the budget for innovation? Given that example around those 14 risk people and your one lead for innovation.
So I'm very lucky to have a boss who believes heavily in innovation. So that's helped a lot, and that's helped the fact that she's around the executive table and is able to kind of fight the fight around having innovation as something that we really need to do. Secondly, it's around partnerships and really working on our existing partnerships and helping them kind of come to the table with some of these things, presenting the opportunities So some of the stuff we've come on, we've been early adopters of new things, and on that basis, we want to be like the test bed of an area. As I said, we're like a perfect size DHB for that. So come into us, get your foot in, learn what it's like in a kind of medium-sized hospital, and then you have the opportunities for going to market in bigger DHBs or worldwide. So there's that. There is a little bit of money around telehealth that we've kind of tried to plow into some innovative practices. So the government ministry gave us some telehealth money, and what we found is a lot of that telehealth stuff was already in place, like Zoom licenses or Teams setups or cameras, etc. We put a lot of that in place, so we're finding the budget is better suited for like innovative practices around telehealth. So that's some budget that we've used there. What I'm hoping to do is we can kind of demonstrate all the multitude of projects you can get going with a small amount of budget. So once we kind of chew through that funding, we'd be able to go back and go, we should really be thinking of this as a permanent way of delivering things. And it's just a couple of $100,000 versus the $500 million of funding that this DHB gets can make a huge difference, even though it's a small fraction of it.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for one more question there, Ben. That was a really good answer, by the way. One of the ones we've got here is, how do you assess which innovations and trials to actually try? So who does that?
So that's a good question, and I don't have a great answer. I guess I want to forgive myself in the sense of I don't want a complicated governance structure over innovation, because that seems to kind of defeat the purpose. I feel like there's a couple of things. One is we react to a problem, and that is the biggest problem brought to us by the business. So we don't decide that priority, they do. So when they decide that priority, we sometimes try and put an innovative slant on it in partnership with other people. What can we do to move this forward that's more than just propping up the status quo? So that's not our priorities. That's the business priority. And by the business, I mean the hardworking clinical people at that coalface. And secondly, that's that kind of telehealth funding thing that I talked about, where we do have a governance structure over it, reporting into the execs, so we can kind of use those funds to seed fund. We've got about 30 or 40 projects coming out of those, and that's got governance and oversight on how we react to that. Yeah,
probably helps when you have partners that are willing to help you
jump
with
in.
that as well.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, look, Ben, I just want to thank you again for your time this morning and being so generous with that time.
No problem.
And I know that Claire Fraser from the pharmacy team was, also heavily engaged around the monitoring project. So I want to thank you for your time as well.
Cool.
Look, it's really great being able to hear from our customers about things that they're doing and sharing that information with our other customers.
Yep.
Look, this recording will be available. It will be sent out if you've registered for the webinar. So if you've got any questions or queries, you can come back to that. I'm actually broadcasting from the Spark Innovation Studio. That's still open during red traffic light settings as well. If you want to come through that environment or get a booking in place, go back to your client team, your account team, or you can actually make contact with us through the IT team as well. The webinars are listed up on the Spark website. So Ben, your one will appear up there shortly. Look, I just want to thank you again. It's been a fantastic presentation, and we really appreciate your time and joining us. And thank you to everyone else that's come along and watched the webinar and participated in the polls. I want to thank you for your time as well. Kia kaha, everyone. Thank you so much.
Nice one. Thank you.